Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing today? There we go. We can do better than that. How are y'all doing today? That's what I'm talking about. I'm excited for this session. I like gold. I like alchemy. I think it's pretty cool. But I'm really excited. My name is Ben Warshaw. I lead partner operations at DBT Labs. So thanks for joining us this morning for Turning Data into Gold, where we meet the alchemists from Census, Carta, and ClickUp, 3 Cs. We've got some wonderful speakers for you. We have Boris Jabes, the CEO and co-founder at Census. We have Julia King, VP of Data and Analytics at Carta, and Marc Stone, Head of Analytics at ClickUp. Just a reminder, all chat conversations and Q&A for this session will take place in the DBT community Slack in Coalesce, Turning Data into Gold, the name of the channel. If you're not already on the community Slack, there goes the mic. If you're not already on the community Slack, you still have time to join, community.getdbt.com, and you'll find the channel once you're inside. Let's see. If,
are you going to be monitoring it, or should I be monitoring it?
Oh, are you going to monitor? We have...
No, don't make me do it.
I will not be monitoring the chat. We do have someone monitoring the chat, though. After the session concludes, we'll have our speakers available to answer more Q&A in the Slack channel for about an hour or so. New Orleans attendees, please be aware that we're about 30 seconds ahead of those watching virtually, so keep the spoilers out of the chat if you can. And otherwise, let's get started. Over to you, Boris and Marc.
Thank you. We'll try to have a bunch of spoilers throughout the talk. That'd be really great. I can't wait for Carta and ClickUp to launch things today. Well, listen, I figured we start with like a slightly deeper introduction of how each of you got into driving revenue at your company. So why don't you describe a little bit more about your function and your company, and like specifically how your team drives revenue?
Starting with me, ladies first. Hi, everybody. I'm Julia, as introduced a few minutes earlier. I manage the data organization at Carta. We're a private equity management software, so a lot of you working at startups might have a Carta account, hopefully, and get a little confetti when the equity.
How many people here use Carta or have experienced Carta? There
oh
you
my
go,
God,
Julia.
this is amazing. Hi, everybody.
You impact almost everyone in tech.
Well, they impact
You don't just drive revenue for yourself, right? You drive revenue for everyone.
Hopefully, a lot of revenue for you guys. And our team is responsible for all aspects of data at Carta, so we work with all the product teams, marketing team, business development, sales, all the GTM organizations. And specifically how we drive revenue impact is one of the big responsibilities for our team is to make sure that we have accurate metrics, which is very important for all of you data professionals. You probably know how hard it is to do. And it's a long road for us, but one of the things that we need to make sure that the rest of the company can benefit from is having a consistent layer of metric represented throughout the organization and making sure that we have the calculations are correct, the differences are explained, the definitions are documented, et cetera. And with that, the business teams, the finance team, the marketing team, the product teams can actually make much better decisions because they understand what's happening in the business.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Marc. I'm the head of analytics at ClickUp. Our data org is probably about 25 people, and we also are in charge of basically all the different data interlocks, marketing, sales, finance reporting, and then also a lot of like operational data enablement. So like connecting data out to other systems so that other teams can use what we're learning in the warehouse, which is what I'm excited to talk about today. And how many of you use ClickUp? It's a project management software. Yeah, hey. I got a few. Carter's winning in this room. We'll call that good.
I mean, how many people here, first of all, I assume everyone here uses DBT, but how many of you, to follow up on Marc's point, how many of you are using it for powering more than a reporting system? Okay, like 1/3 of the room. All right, so Marc, why don't you quote unquote double click on that and tell us how you went from doing just reporting to driving operational systems and why.
Cool. Yeah, so we started doing that pretty much right away. Our ClickUp's only about 5 years old. The data team's a little over 2 years old. And very early on, ClickUp is, as a project management tool, we have about 15 different core features to the product, and there's lots of ways to look at that data. So even a simple question like user engagement requires a lot of sort of data processing and data decision making. And we were starting to do that right away in the data warehouse to figure out what are our customers doing, how are they engaging with the product, and like I said, it took like minutes for us to be like, oh, I bet sales would like to know this too. And so right away we started looking at how can we basically ship these customer insights, and maybe even less than insights, more just like user data into Salesforce in a way where it's not just like, oh, they created 1,000 tasks or something like that. It's like, what are the engagement metrics and how can we ship that to that team? And then just it kind of grows from there as people learn like, oh, these guys have interesting answers. It expands to customer success and customer support. It's like, how do we get more and more of that data out into the organization in the systems where they're working?
So hold on. Salespeople didn't ask you for it. You just figured, wait a second, this is actually valuable for all of you and we should give it to you?
Salespeople ask for everything all the time. So
the key is to say when you say yes and when you say no.
It's not a fair prediction to say like they got it right because they asked for everything and this is the one thing we could actually do. So I was just happy.
Was it the same for you, Julia? Did everyone in sales keep asking you for stuff? Did they even know that the data team could help them?
Not always, actually. So
Okay.
I think sometimes they do ask for a lot, and sometimes they ask for things we can't do, like what is everybody else in the ecosystem doing? But sometimes we have insights that the sales team is not aware of, and the marketing team is not aware of, that we can provide. So it's been definitely an interesting challenge of educating the rest of our business teams of what data we do have, or what insights can we provide to them based on that data, and then how can we deliver it to them where they are. So it could be in Salesforce, which is obviously a big tool for the sales teams. We have a lot of other tools we use. I think a lot of startups go through multiple tool selections and never quite die. So we actually integrate with a number of tools where we hopefully send the same data to those tools so we don't have different answers for different teams depending on what they're using, which is one of the big challenges.
Yeah, I feel like my whole life people have said, well, we have the reporting, so just tell the salespeople to go to the reporting. Have you attempted that? Because I only saw like a handful of people say, hey, we push data to other systems. So you assume, right, that everyone in your company is going to go look at your reporting data. Why don't they?
You totally do. Like Looker is amazing, right? Everybody knows how to use it. It's super easy. Everything is easy to find, not. But the reality is people do their day-to-day job and the tools that they like and are comfortable with. So I do think that the role of the data team is to provide that data, again, like to where people are. Unfortunately, as they keep changing tools, it becomes more and more challenging. You know, you have quite a big organization all of a sudden supporting these integrations and constantly changing them and updating them. But the reality is their day-to-day job and their priorities are not to figure out how to use a reporting tool. It's to sell, to market, to talk to customers. And so we need to make sure that we're providing the right features and products for them to do that job really well.
Yeah, I think you really have to be thinking like, how can we get this data into their systems? If you're very small, you have one or two salespeople, you won't notice this, but as soon as you go to dozens or hundreds, IT starts asking questions like, how much revenue are we losing by sales reps switching from one system to another? And they start quantifying it, and that number is not small, and that's just sales. You have customer support. So if you have a Tableau tab open, and you have to look up a customer there, or a Looker tab, and then you have a Salesforce tab, and you're switching back and forth, those minutes add up very quickly, and the load times add up and everything. So it's better just get it where it can go from the beginning.
The way I always think about it is, not only would you be saving people time on switching between tabs, which sounds small but adds up a lot, you can't really automate browsing a tab, right? And what I've found salespeople or marketing people do once you integrate the data the way you two have is they start to automate things. Right? They'll say, well, let me make a rule that if customer is not using this feature after 30 days, like we have an alert and that's automatic rather than just saving you a tab, right? So who owns the metrics? Since, Julia, you talked about, number one is to get the right definitions, the right metrics. And who owns all this automation in your company? So the ability to kind of get those metrics into the right place.
I guess I'll jump into that one. the data team owns the automation, but I want to make it clear that we don't own the definitions of the metrics, right? So sales segmentation's been a big one for us because there's like 4 different definitions of segments of accounts in our company. And so how finance looks at it versus how a sales team manages those segments is very different. But the definitions owned by the team, once we understand what they are, if we can build that view in the warehouse and then make sure that we pipe that data back again to Salesforce or to finance systems. We use Pigment, I think, to the systems that finance uses, and make sure that the data goes in cleanly and we have the feedback on whether these things were successful. It makes it a lot easier for us because we can troubleshoot if something goes wrong, and we have the visibility into anything that might not be working. But most of the ownership is on us.
For us, it's kind of a split question because there's like strategic metrics and there's tactical metrics. And at the strategic level, whoever is building the reports for the board has to ultimately own those definitions because they're talking with the board. And so at ClickUp, that's the finance team. And so the business intelligence team works very closely with the finance team to own those strategic company level metrics. And more where the data team tends to work very, very closely is all of the different operational and tactical metrics across the organization. And so it's our job whenever possible to cascade those down. It's not always possible, but usually you can. And so there's a lot of alignment that occurs, but then actually controlling the flow of data. I would say we own the data models and the definitions of a lot of the tactical data that we're sending, but we don't really own, I would say, the whole integration because we have like a systems team, like an IT team basically, who runs the systems. They have system administrators. So it's a collaboration. And each one, I mean, if you have like a Zendesk in your support team, you have a Salesforce over here, like they all have different admins. And so we build very good relationships with all of basically the primary admins, so we know when we're creating fields, what are we creating, and it's ongoing, it's iterative, it's a lot of extra work, but it gets rid of the word discrepancy more and more. And every time we don't get a discrepancy report, that's the win of doing this.
Yeah, I was going to ask both of you, how do you know you're driving impact, right? How do you know you're having an effect on dollars? And I suppose a leading indicator is number of conversations about discrepancies. Maybe that's a good, drive a metric down to 0 at your company. How many people here have had a discrepancy conversation? Oh. There we go. Okay, most people. So yeah, how do you know? How do you know that you've grown significant data teams, right? These are pretty large. Why? How do you drive impact? How does your company know that your team is driving this kind of value?
I mean, I think discrepancy is a big one, and being able to standardize on these definitions and standardize on the metrics. Being able to automate more than we have before, so getting people out of spreadsheets, because in a lot of cases, when people don't trust the data in one of the systems, they will find the source of data and get it into a spreadsheet and do some calculations and share it while sharing, between the teams. So getting people out of the spreadsheets and getting them into the right tools, again, doesn't have to be a reporting tool. It could be the finance tool or the Salesforces of the world. In our case, and we're still a lot of work to do still, it's not nowhere near done, but improving some of the business systems as well. We did a lot of automation, and I don't know if anybody else is familiar with this. We did a lot of automation in Salesforce because it allows for that to happen, but it's not designed for that to happen. And so we've been having a lot of issues with Salesforce performance and being able to update metrics in there and how long does it take and what kind of project it is. So just that speed to delivery on the system side has increased significantly because now we can pre-calculate these definitions and metrics and send them to Salesforce instead of doing them in Salesforce. And so the turnaround on how quickly the sales team or the account management team can see the results and then their views is much faster too. So there's been a number of areas where the improvement has been noticeable. But again, still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think our impact, one of the ways that we're able to win a lot of support for this type of work is really speed to deployment. So this design pattern, it's very different. It sort of flies in the face of your one-to-one system connections between product and Salesforce or Zendesk and maybe your website. All these one-to-one integrations where data is flowing, you have all these inconsistencies. That's really the way that most people are still doing it. And this design pattern is different. It takes a little while to adopt. But one of the things that we've found very successful is regularly we'll talk with a systems team and they're like, okay, we need to add this type of data attribute to this system over here. And we're like, oh, we can do that. Like we already have that on a table. We thought of that like a year ago because we had to use it in this report. And it's become part of our data mart. And we're already connected via something like Census. So we can get those fields into production in minutes, hours, not weeks, days. And we regularly get that feedback from the admins. They're just like, whoa, it's already in there. Like it's very fast. And I think we keep using Salesforce as an example because it's very broad, but we do this with like 12 different tools. So it's driving identity traits into Amplitude. It's driving offline conversions into Google Ads and Facebook Ads, things that you can model out in the warehouse very effectively and then send to systems after the fact with sort of all the enriched data that you basically need. And that impact across the org adds up. And a lot of people don't see it, so you do have to sort of really fight for it and like show the value. It's not obvious because what you're doing is you're removing pain that people didn't know that existed, but the system administrators know that that pain is there. And so they're usually very appreciative of this so far.
Yeah, so you two have to focus on like really good 360 feedback when you're talking to your manager, right? Go ask the IT team, like we've saved them so much trouble.
Well, I think the other part of it that I think you sort of alluded to is that you can reuse the same metric in multiple systems. That
right.
the idea that you can build it once, and you might have built it a year ago for some other reason, and now you can reuse it for this other use cases is huge. It really leverages the team so much better and makes us move so much faster too.
If you built it cleanly in DBT,
there's a lot of ifs.
Then you can just ship it later.
Yeah. I mean, do you sometimes feel like you're more than a data team? You're some kind of IT team as well? Or does the IT team go, wait a second, like they're going to hijack everything that we do, and they're not going to want to grow my team anymore?
Definitely a little bit.
Trying to get some spoilers going here.
It is a challenge because it's like, is this our job? Like, no one really asked us to do this. I sort of wanted to proactively do it to get rid of those discrepancies, like I said. And so there's a risk reward in every system that you insert yourself into. There's maintenance, there's upkeep, there's now tribal knowledge that your team is aggregating that maybe a core systems team. And we don't want system administrators like on the data team. Like that fit isn't quite there yet. But I do think there's a much better future for systems, IT teams, and data teams to work very closely together. And that's basically what we're doing, is we're working together, and it's saving them headcount. They're not getting as big, but they're also staying more agile because they're not responsible for every data connection and every data update every time a record changes. It's having that warehouse that basically can do batch updates is game-changing for them.
I also think, and I'm guessing, but I also think it makes their jobs a little bit more interesting because I think, and we used to be in the same position too, where everything became so tactical and operational, where like, oh, somebody asked for this metric again or for this field to be updated in 20 different places, and so the majority of your time is spent updating this field in 20 different places instead of actually helping the sales team think through, how can they utilize the data that they have better, how can they use Salesforce better. So I think the quality of your day-to-day job satisfaction for data teams too. Like data teams don't want to rebuild the same metric 20 times either if they can take one cleanly defined, perfectly built DBT model and just reuse that in multiple places. So I think just what we spend our time on changes with this too and makes it a lot more interesting and engaging.
So given that you both have honed this kind of collaboration between the systems teams and the data team, what went wrong along the way? Like, how does that kind of collaboration fail? Since most people here haven't collaborated with their systems teams.
I mean, it hasn't, I wouldn't say it failed.
Nothing went wrong, really?
Oh, no. Many things have gone wrong. I don't know, I wouldn't go as far as failing. I hope our systems team is watching this. But I think it is a change, and it's a big shift in mindset and who owns what. Like what we just talked about, like how many headcount conversations or responsibilities. I think in this sort of setup, who actually is responsible for the final product gets a little fuzzy. And so if something does go wrong, like we've definitely had metrics that were incorrect that got pumped into Salesforce. Was it as you know, I've said, it's not Census's fault. It's upstream or downstream. Like, where in this process did the problem happen, and who owns the fix, and how do we respond to it? That's been definitely something we've been working through, and hasn't always gone smoothly. Working through prioritizing, like if there's a big project going on and a lot of changes need to be made, and maybe we don't have this metric ready, and we need to build this new model to calculate whatever is needed, how do we make sure that we prioritize this work along with all the other work that we need to do? I think that's been definitely challenging, because it might be a priority for the systems team or sales team, but might not be a priority for the data team, because we support all these other projects as well. So that's been that's been a big challenge for us.
Yeah, I think the main thing that's gone wrong, like 99% of the problems are ownership, like you alluded to. There's a fuzzy line there. It's like, yeah, they own the systems. That's definitely what we want to see continue, but we don't really want them to own how they define data in those systems. And so it's fuzzy, and it creates rework. Every once in a while to be like, oh, we're working on this field, and it's like, oh, we're also working on that same field. And so you end up, you've duplicated work, because we've grown fast enough and big enough that we don't know everything that everybody else is doing. And the main problem that probably arises from that is anytime something goes wrong, we both get called. So now we're both there. But it helps us build our relationship, because now every little discrepancy and everything that's wrong, we both get to learn together. And I don't think there's a lot of systems leaders out there who are familiar with like warehouse first design. Like it's new, and so somebody has to take that leap and start educating them. But I've found them to be very receptive, very interested. Like you said, it makes their job more interesting. They want to learn about streaming data and warehouses and reverse ETL and this stuff. Like they're not like, no, we can't do it. They're uncomfortable a lot of the time, and they will come with their own opinions of how things can be connected, and you have to sort of persuade them and show them like, oh, in this specific case, this is going to be like way easier to just do it this way. And we found them to be pretty receptive and partners in that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Ownership is always where this comes down to, and some people want to collaborate, they want to share the pain. Some people will see you as a new dependency, and now they're like, wait, it used to be that I could just fix the formula in my Salesforce, and now it's a calculated field from the warehouse. This doesn't sound good. Now my boss calls me and I have to call Marc. But I think your point about speed of iteration seems like if you can demonstrate that you can deliver metrics that are of higher quality at equal speed, or higher quality and lower latency even, then you're winning, right? And I like this idea that you both get called. Like there's a principal's office, and they're like, the data team gets called and the sales ops team gets called. That's really good. We should say, like, there should be a rule, like for any metric that you help support, you should say, well, your boss, if they get angry, like we both get called, as opposed to the data team being blamed for everything. I could just see that happening. So one of the things I feel like we've talked about a few times before here today is when you try to convince people about this warehouse-centric view of the world, or let's even call it DBT-centric view of the world, you're trying to make everyone in the marketing team, finance team, sales team kind of dependent at the tail end of this refinery, right? There are trade-offs with that today, right? We're not all in real time. We're not, there are things they have to wait for. Has that been a problem for getting people to adopt, your, let's call it, warehouse data team centric view of data integration? And how did you get people over the hump?
It hasn't been as big of an issue, but there definitely been use cases that have come up that, the demand is we need something real time. I think in a lot of cases, if you really ask about what is needed and kind of dig into why the teams or whoever's requesting it needs it real time, you find out that the answer is something different. But we're very upfront about we have an easy solution to solve most use cases that don't require real time data. There's always going to be a very small set of use cases, and it really is small, where real time is required, and maybe we need to consider some other way of doing it. But you also can't expect it to have a lot of insights, right? Like real time data most of the time is not going to have some advanced model built on top of it too. That's like a whole different setup that does exist, but nothing from like an analytical warehouse and DBT model. So trying to separate what that need is and who needs it and really why, and actually understanding if real time is what they actually need is very important. In a lot of cases, people ask for it because that's what they heard somewhere else. Like, it's important to have real time data, and it's not what they need for their day-to-day job.
Yeah, real time sometimes does feel like a buzzword. I often ask people, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, what do you mean by real time? Like, what's your latency requirement?
And what are you going to do with it?
Well, yeah, but sometimes people, their definition of it is minutes, which if you go to, like, the Kafka person, they're like, what are you talking about, minutes? So yeah, it really depends on who you're talking to. Marc, was it the same for you? Did you also tell them you don't need real time?
I mean, you have to a lot. So it is difficult. Everyone wants real time. Like, it's just, you start with that assumption.
It's
and
like
you
candy, right? It's like, who doesn't want everything all the time, all at once?
Mm-hmm. Like Tableau dashboards.
Great movie.
Our finance Tableau dashboards, they need to update in real time, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Wall Street's asking you every day.
who's making decisions based on real-time financial data right now? And so you have to walk back from that a little bit. There are places where real-time is definitely there and needed. And for us, there was a lot of those where people pushed, and we were just doing so many things that I couldn't always win those conversations or like persuade and work on them. And if I have a regret, it's actually not going back. Like, I would go back and I would try to win more of those conversations, because what was built instead to achieve that real time is now tech debt that we have to deal with on the long going. But if I'm being honest, like, as we did this 2 years ago, I wasn't sure if it was going to work either. Like, we were like, yeah, let's try Census. Let's try to send some of this data to systems. I didn't want to be like, we're going to build the entire company's architecture this way. But if I could do it today, I definitely would. I would try to win that for sure. And I think it would be significantly more valuable to the company and keep us more agile to do it this way.
Yeah, I can see that, right? Like, the journey of, I'd say, leadership is like how much you're willing to stick your neck out for your team, for your product, for your code, for your tools. And I always felt like you should build the correct feedback loop and correct data, and then just try to make it tighter and tighter so that hey, why not? Maybe we need real-time finance somewhere. I mean, I get annoyed how long it takes to close books at the end of the month. Like, that's my pet peeve. I was like, why? Why does this take so long?
But you're the CEO. You should be.
And I realize, but it has something to do with accounting, and I don't know why it takes so long.
You just want to know how much money you guys made.
Sure. I think they're fast at telling me how much money we made. It just takes longer to square the I's or dot the I's on all the costs and what they meant. Sorry.
Did you just say square the I's?
I apologize. I'm getting very flustered by closing the books. I hope there are no accountants here. It's just
there can't be, right?
There can't be. Are there? Anyone? Is there any converted accountants, like who were once accountants and are analysts? Sorry, I'm so sorry.
What was that gasp?
Well, you didn't expect any. All right. Well, I want to make sure we're mindful of time. So,
how convenient.
Yeah. So most people here said, they haven't gone down this path yet, but I definitely saw a bunch of heads nod around like warehouse-centric view of the world and making sure our metrics kind of conquer the company. I tend to think of my life as trying to fight entropy and bringing order to chaos. So, how do you get people started down this path? Like, since you now have so much clout in your company, you have to think back. Don't you?
I feel very important right now.
You're very important people, as far as I know. And so, how would you get people started if they're just trying to get down this journey now?
It all starts with a relationship at the end of the day. So, establishing the communication with the systems teams and I'll bring up Salesforce again because or similar. Those are the systems that I use the most and are most critical. And understanding what their pain points are, because they are. And the pain points will end up being these, we need to keep up with these metric definitions or updates or resegmentation, what have you. And then just asking them to do a trial. Like, can we just do a POC? That's what we did. We did that with Census, and it sounds like you did too, where we said, we think we should be able to do this. We don't want to build it ourselves because integrating with Salesforce is just painful. Hey, there's a tool that does that. And it sounds like it's going to take an hour to set up and then apparently a few minutes to start sending the data through. Can we just try it? Can you try it with us? And the reality is everybody wants to do a good job and everybody wants to improve. So I don't think there's as much of a pushback. as we sort of assumed it might be. And that's what happened with us, and we tried it, and it was really that fast. We shamefully didn't even have a testing environment for Salesforce at the time, so we just tested it with production, and it worked. So everybody was very happy. But just doing that one definition, one metric, one something, and doing it quickly, and showing how fast it was, and the fact that actually the systems team almost had to talk less to us than more at the end, also sometimes was a benefit. Not that they don't like us, but it again makes them move faster. So that's how it worked for us.
We also tested in production because
there's
You make me
very
feel
little.
better.
There are very little test environments in these systems, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
it's not your fault.
we do now, and we're very proud of it. It works very well. We find something that isn't easy for the systems team to solve, or like a system to solve and solve their problem, and they'll want to learn more. So just find a metric that they can't calculate on the fly and solve that, and it kind of grew from there. And like I said, my one regret is we didn't grow fast enough. We should have done more even.
I feel like that's the story of ClickUp. It's we've grown so fast, and we should have grown even faster.
It's definitely what our leadership thinks.
Yeah, who here hasn't seen a ClickUp billboard somewhere? Yeah, see, no one. Everyone has
Winning.
seen. Yeah, exactly. Billboards as a service. Sorry, just kidding. Go ahead. All right, well, listen. You want me to do this, man? Well, because we're at time, and thank you for questions online, and we'll make sure to get online and answer anything that's straggling. Julia, Marc, thanks for doing this. Hopefully this was informative for everybody, and happy to stick around the room afterwards as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.